Hello and welcome to the wonderful world of old sheet music. Tonight I'm looking at a piece called Intermezzo Sinfonia, which is actually from an opera called Cavalleria Rusticana by Pietro Mascagni. And we got a very elaborate calligraphy there. Pretty elaborate art with the lyre. And a list of all the other things they're selling. This is by the National Edition, most reliable published. Take only the National Edition from National Music Company in Chicago. Not one I'm very familiar with. This piece, though, I have heard of, is famous because the opera it's from was considered to kind of usher in this new age of Italian opera, if you're into that. It was published in 1890. So compared to some other opera, it's relatively new. So it's kind of like seen as the birth of modern opera, and this particular piece became quite famous from that opera. And the composer went on to write some other operas, but it was one of those things that he kind of never achieved as much success as he did with this one, the breakout hit opera Cavalleria Rusticana, which basically means rustic chivalry. So the idea of the charm of the rustic people had a certain chivalry in Italy. So there is a short story it was based on. If you're interested in looking that up sometime, you can certainly do more research on it if that's something that interests you. I always look at the back, and the back of this also has just kind of a list of other pieces. What's interesting here is it says these books are all printed from the new electrotype plates, full sheet music size, which is actually the same size. It's probably hard to tell on this, but it's bigger than a modern piano book or a modern sheet music. It's just like a taller size. And this electrotype plate was the kind of thing they used to publish newspapers as well. So it's the same technology, type of modern printing press, I guess you could say. At that time it was considered very modern, but now of course we wouldn't. Interestingly enough, we have been watching Twilight Zone, me and my wife, like old Twilight Zone episodes, and one of them actually is about a electrotype plate person who works for a newspaper, and it turns out he's actually the devil in disguise, and he can type his electrotype so fast that it's like amazing, and it saves this local newspaper. Anyway, kind of interesting that this is printed on this same technology. So at that time period, I think that was used for a lot of things. So a little side note there. This is Intermezzo Sinfonica. Let's see what it sounds like. Lots of big chords and rolls, so it's a little more challenging than some of the other pieces I've had. We'll see how I do with it. So that is the Sinfonia Intermezzo from Cavalleria Rusticana. Now, throughout the middle of it, there's tons of those rolled chords, and it was on 4 staff. So what they do oftentimes, if it's like a adaptation or transcription from a opera, is try to include as many notes as they can, and they know that it's impossible for one person to play all the notes that an entire ensemble or pit orchestra would play. So they'll kind of like just give you all the notes and then put a bunch of rolls in there so that it's like, you know, they're usually too far apart that your hand can reach it unless you do a lot of rolls. But then they'll also sometimes include this organa interno. You probably can't see that because I can see, there we go. My camera was not focusing on that. Organa interno means that's the main melody, and that's like the internal notes of this. So it's kind of like the simplified version. So I didn't play that, I played this, and I kind of slowed down throughout it so I could get all the notes, but it may not have been the full speed. It's supposed to be on Dante 54, actually, now that I look at it, so I was probably about right, if not a little bit too fast, honestly. So overall, I think you could get a pretty good idea of what it was supposed to sound like then from that performance. Hope you enjoyed.